Hi, everyone. This is April 15th, 2021. This is our third week of doing this Linux workshop. And today we're going to start off by talking a bit about GitHub management for those who don't have much experience. But I'd like to open up for questions if you have anything on your mind pertaining to Linux. I know, Yang, you're working with some of the data merging. Do you have any questions with what you've been working on? We could talk about that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Elaine, do you have any questions?
Nothing specific to the Linux or HPC, but I did want to verify my understanding of the pull request on GitHub.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I hope to explain this from start to finish in a very well structured way. We'll have some other members joining us in a bit. John, Akil, but for now, we can always catch them up when we did. That's fine. So yeah, GitHub. For those who don't know, I like to explain that it's kind of like social media for software developers because you can share projects, kind of like posts. You can follow people. You can set a bio. So it is like it does fall under the category of social media. I want to talk a bit about the idea of how it's structured and how to use Git to manage projects. So for that, I'm going to create a mock repository, just something small, so you can see that I have a bunch of projects going on. And hi, John, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. And so we're just getting started with GitHub. Do you have experience with GitHub at all?
No, not really.
Okay, so that's perfect. Exactly why I'm doing this. Do you have any other questions before we get started?
Oh, no, please
Okay.
carry on.
Okay. Sure. So yeah, once you have a GitHub account, right, you can go to your repositories. If you haven't forked any, which we'll talk about the term forking, or created your own, you can just create your own in the upper right. You'll give it a name. Hello, Akil.
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm vibing.
Okay. So yeah, so we're creating a repository in your account. I'm a part of other accounts. So you could create a repository in JoLab, and you're going to give it a name. You could give it a description. I'm making mine public for now, but I'll change it to private maybe later. I'm kind of debating on how I'm going to do this. So you have the option to add a README, and what the README is the first kind of initial page you see right here. So when you go to a repository in GitHub, you see that there's all the files here, and then you see the README, and then you can use markdown, to kind of display information. So that's why it says initialize with a README. A git ignore, so any files that are appended with a period, it's kind of conventional in Linux that they're hidden. So when you add this hidden file, git ignore, it tells Git what not to track. So for instance, if we're working on a Python project, there are certain files that Python creates that you don't want to necessarily upload to GitHub because they just don't mean much. We can select anything for this. I don't imagine any of you would be doing Python, but there's an R one for the counterparts in R. And the licenses, I always do this because it tells people who are accessing this repository or any repository you're making kind of the permissions they have. So MIT license means that it basically means it's open source, so they can fork and contribute. So you add all three of those things and you hit create. An important distinction is that we're creating this in the remote repository. Okay, this exists. You can the analog would be saying that this exists in the cloud and you haven't downloaded it yet. But what we want to do is the term that Git uses is called clone. So there's different protocols to cloning this. You can use SSH, you can do this. I've never done this, but I would just use the HTTPS request, and you're going to copy that link, go to the terminal, and go to a directory in which you want to put that file, and do git clone, and magically you'll see that we have the Linux workshop here. So we can cd into it. If I do ls, we have the license, which corresponds to the MIT license we selected. We have the README, which is blank, with the exception of this title. And I'll go into Markdown a bit, but you can identify headers you can identify the size of headers by the number of hashtags you prepend text. And I think this is similar for the vignette development. So that's also related. And how the Markdown language you use for vignette is also the same Markdown language you use. It's a very similar Markdown language you use for creating README files on GitHub. So it's very translatable. Okay. So we made the repo, we cloned it, and I want to show you what happens when we make a change. So I'm going to I can just do it here. We're going to, I want to view all of the files, right? So we see that there are, this is probably better. We see that there are the Git file. This is what tracks your version. So this does all of the file management and basically it allows you to know where you stand relative to the remote repository. Because we cloned it, we're accessing it on the terminal in the local repository. And then the gitignore file is all of the R files that it chooses to not track. So it doesn't track our data, it doesn't track our history, it doesn't track any of the other files that R might create. It even doesn't track the vignette files that it creates, because in reality, you can just recreate these if you have the code that creates these PDFs or HTMLs. Okay, so I'm gonna edit the README using Vim, and that's not what I want to do. Okay, we can say that this is a test commit to our repository repo. Okay, and all I did with that is I used V, the file name. Right now we're in command node with Vim. What you can do is hit I to enter it in insert mode. You can kind of see that it changes in the lower left-hand corner. Everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. I didn't see the green box around my monitor, so I was afraid. To get out of insert mode, you hit escape. And when you want to save it, you can do : which allows you to execute a command. So Q means quit, W means save. You do WQ, it means save and then quit, and you hit enter and it saves and then quit. Okay. So we in our repository, in the local branch, we made a change to a file. We can track those changes by doing git status. And this tells us some things. It tells us we're on the main branch. And I'll draw up a figure in a bit to explain branches in Git and what it means. We can say that our branch is up to date with the main remote branch. That's what we initially created here. So, right, we modified it. It recognizes the .git file the .git file recognizes that we have changed README, and it says changes are not staged for commit. Okay, so we want to what you do is you kind of you want to first stage your changes. Okay, so you can do git add, and then either the file name, you could do README and just do individual files that way, or you can do dot, which means all files. and it adds all files in the current working directory, but Git it'll only matter for the files that you made changes to. So if we have a file that's been persistent in some past updates to our Git repo, and we do git add dot, where it adds the file that really hasn't changed much, it'll be fine even though we're adding all files in the current working directory. It basically will take any file in the directory, but just git add dot is an easy way to just stage all of the files that's been changed in your working directory, in your repo. When we do this, we won't get any feedback, but we can say git status, and that red turned to green. It says that, it basically says that these changes are to be committed, okay? Which means that we've staged these changes, and what we're gonna wanna do is do git commit, right? And commit is gonna take an argument, which is a message. And if you don't remember M, it's going to, if you do git commit enter, it's gonna bring you into a Vim terminal where you wanna just enter the message for the commit, because that's how GitHub tracks your changes. But -M is just a command line argument. So you can do add contribution. Okay. Actually, let's say I add change. Let's say I say add change, but I spell it wrong, like that. Okay. I hit enter. So even though it spelled it wrong, you can kind of see that my my bad spelling is still there. Usually the convention when you're doing commits is to make this a present tense verb. So you wouldn't say added change, you'd say add change. And I'll explain why in a bit. And you can see that it notices that we've changed one file, we've inserted 3 things, and then we've deleted 1 thing. And I think that's a character. It's either a character count or a line count. I think it's a line count. Yeah, it would be a line count. So if we want to change that phrasing from, or correct our misspelling of change, you can do git amend. If I can spell it right. Make sure I do it right. There it is, git amend. And this is the Vim editor that you would be given if you didn't do the -M for the command line argument for the name of the commit. So we correct change, and we do WQ for save quit. And then we're ready to push our changes. So we do git push, right? And we updated the README, so once we refresh it here, you can see that this is our test commit to our repo, right? So the commands you want to really care about is git clone, and this is going to be kind of link to repo. Then it's going to be git add dot. The dot means all files in the working directory. Git commit -M message, git push. Okay. So from this, we created, this is just the lingo, we created a remote branch in GitHub. We cloned the remote branch into our local repository. We made some change in the local repository, local branch. We staged those changes, we committed those changes, and then we pushed those changes. And then you can see the changes are now in sync between 2 repositories, remote and local. Does anyone have any question about the phrasing or what I did? If not, we can ask the question, okay, so what happens if someone goes into this README from the main branch and adds another line. This is a second test commit, right? And when you make changes on here, you can do something. You even have a spot to commit changes. You can say updated README. I don't know if it's TXT or MD for Markdown. And then you can add descriptions, and then it wants, okay, do we want to commit to the main branch or create a new branch, and then start a pull request. That's where the pull request comes in when you select something like this. But we want to commit it to the main branch. And now, if we do get status, it says that it is up to date, but that's because it doesn't know that we made the changes in the remote branch. But to get those changes that we've made, you do get pull, and you'll see that when we execute get pull, the .git file is what recognizes that we are able to go from a version that was previously behind our main branch to the updated version. So whenever changes are made, you'll do a git pull. Okay. And so this is all well and good if you're working on a project kind of individually, because then you only need to worry about these 4 commands. But when you're working on a project like we are with Sesame, you often have to create branches, okay? And for this, what a branch, you either create branches or you can fork projects. Forking can be thought of taking a snapshot of that repo at one instance of time and delineating from it. And you might be able to make pull requests from forks, but I'm not sure. We'll start with branches because I know that's mostly what we'll want to do with Sesame. And sorry, my explanation for forking. Forking is like copying a repository at one instance of time and putting it in your own GitHub account, your own GitHub listing of a repository. So when you fork Sesame, when Wanding asks you to fork Sesame, all he means is take a snapshot of Sesame at that point in time, and then you're readily able to use these commands to make changes on your local repo. That's what it means. But when you're working on projects that are shared amongst users, you don't all want to be like adding, committing, pushing, like staging, committing, and pushing these things, because you can have conflicts if you work in the same file. It's kind of like if multiple people were in the same Excel file or same Word file, you get conflicting versions. I know that happened a couple times when we had the sample sheet in Dropbox, and Yang and I were both simultaneously trying to move data around. But an easier way to manage that is to do git checkout, which if we do git checkout and let's look what it says. Okay, there is no -help. What if I do -help, right? Yeah, so git checkout it switches branches or restores working tree file. So we're going to want to switch a branch, and we can create a branch by doing -b for branch, and then you want to create a branch. So we're going to create a new branch. We can do dev change readme if we're going to keep doing that, or let's do dev add directory, add dir. Okay, so this is all one name, even though there's a / kind of indicating a directory, but this / is just to separate the type of thing we're doing. So whether it's an update, a fix, a development, and then this is the name of what we're actually doing. So when we do this, it says we switch to new branch. So we do git status, and it says on branch dev add dir. And you can view branches by going under this right here. You can kind of see that this is a little different from this icon because this kind of indicates forking, this indicates branches. And even if we go to view all branches, it doesn't even recognize that we have this dev branch, right? But let's say we make a directory, files. We see, and then we want to make a file in files. file 1, touch file 2, touch file 3, ls files. And all touch does is I recently just learned about the command. It just creates a file. So it's really easy. It just touches it. So we added some files. They're empty. They don't have much. I think that you might, if I do git status. Okay, so it does recognize that there is something. So what we can do is we can do git add to add those, to stage those commits, stage the files we made. Git commit to commit the changes, add files in files. Okay, and it recognized we added those files. So it was three files changed, 0 insertions, 0 deletions, and we do git push, right? But we're on a branch, we're ahead of main, but the branch that we created doesn't know where to connect to. It doesn't know the upstream. Upstream is kind of like, if you were to look backwards, you'd want to know to what branch do you want to push your changes to. So you're going to set this flag, in addition to doing git push, you're going to want to set a flag which is set upstream. And your upstream is origin. That is kind of what main origin is. This is main and origin are kind of synonymous. There we go. And then you want to, the second argument after set upstream will be the branch you created. Okay. And we did, right? And it says, and when we hit refresh, you'll notice we have a branch here. And you can switch between branches. Okay. Right now we're viewing the README, but if we go back to the full directory, you'll notice that in main, there is only license and README, but in dev, there's files. And then in there, we have files 1 and 2. So let's say, oh, that's bad. Oh, I was trying to access the file tree of files, but it's not there. Okay. So there's an option to make a pull request to basically take, it's asking a request to pull the branch that we deviated from main, pull the branch we deviated from main to main. You could click the button here, or what you could do is you could just, I have iTerm, so you can do command click on here, and it'll bring up this pull request. And there's the commit title, there's a comment, this creates sample directory. And then you can even assign reviewers, right? So if I was in a team, I could assign it to different people. I might assign myself to the assignee. There are different ways to label this for management, question, documentation, right? For projects, you can put under different projects. I have none. And then maybe if you set milestones, you do this as well. So Git is really used for, it's open source and it's free, but it's meant to be used by project development teams, which is, it's a good thing that we're using it because it's a lot of good features. So I can click create pull request, right? And since I'm the one who created the pull request and I'm the one who kind of owns and manages the repository, I can create a pull request and simultaneously see that I can accept it. But from your view, if you create a pull request on Sesame, you won't be able to accept it because that'll be Wanding's, that's in Wanding's jurisdiction. So imagine that you're a user, you're creating a pull request, and then you tell me, hey, I created a pull request, or I get an email, and then I can hit merge pull request. And you might even see that now under the pull request tab here, you have one pull request. Oh, add files. What does it do? Well, I'm the one in charge. It creates sample directory and it's documentation, and the assignee is Ethan. So let's merge that, merge. And it says pull request successfully merged and closed. So this thread is closed. I go back to this, pull request is 0. That's not what I wanted to do. Go back to this, pull request is 0, and we now have files. And then if you go to the history, you'll see that it's right there under commits, and that one was verified. These were verified because I'm the one who said yes. I'm the one who said that they're good from the main developer end, the one who's in charge. So that would be Wanding. These are what people who would do, who are working from a local branch instead of the remote branch. So yeah, so for this, right, let's just rehash. It's git checkout -b branch name. And then if you want to push, then you do git push. And the first time you do this for a new branch, you have to say set upstream. So it'd be like this. I'm just going to use the same one I did here. But now if I add another file in here, so I touch file 4, I do git add, stage them, git commit, add 4th file, right? And git push, I don't have to set upstream, right? But when I refresh, it'll notice that in files here, there is no file 4. So what I'll do is I'll go to, there's no file 4 in main, right? And it doesn't prompt me for creating another pull request. So for the first time, this is 2 things to note. For the first time you create a pull request on a new branch, it'll tell you to set upstream, A, and B, it'll tell you where to create the pull requests. But every subsequent staging, committing, and pushing of something you changed in the local branch, the local repository, you'll have to go into your branch here, pull request, new pull request, go to your dev branch, and it'll check off able to merge, create pull request, add 4th file, create pull request, and then you'll tell Wanding, who will review it, see it's there, and hit merge pull request. Confirm merge. Merging. Done. Okay. So accepting pull request, this is all done. Just do comments because I'm in .sh. This is all done on GitHub. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about that? That system?
I have a question.
Sure.
If you make changes to a documentation, but you already did a pull request, was that what you did with the merging, or is like, do you have to push it or something?
Okay. What's the scenario?
Like specifically what the scenario is?
So, well, like,
Um,
okay. So the idea is you make a change on your computer, on your local branch, right?
yes.
Okay. You commit those, you stage them by doing git add, you commit them, and then you push them when you want to send them to the remote branch, which is what we see on GitHub. And
I made the changes on GitHub.
you mean you edited on here?
Yeah, like if I'm editing documentation on GitHub
Yes.
and
So-
then I made a pull request, but then updated the documentation on GitHub, is the pull request still updated automatically? Because that's what I
No, you have to
assumed.
create a new pull request.
A new pull request. Okay.
Because I
think
assume you're
Wanding
working,
said that.
I assume you're working on some sort of branch, right? You forked it or something. I think that's the equivalent of branching. Let's actually explore that
Yes.
together because I've never branched. Where should we fork it? Oh man. I guess it doesn't make sense to fork it to my own. I guess I'll do it directly. So I can fork it to Drexel AI. and then I guess I can, and then it just functions as a normal repository, and I can commit to it. Are there branches here? There are branches here. So yeah, if you, so it looks like, okay, I understand. So if you fork a repository, the repository is essentially copied, and it acts as if it was your own. So you don't necessarily need to create pull requests on those because you're not accessing it from a branch. You might have to create pull requests to get your updates from the fork into the main, which would be Wanding's version of Sesame. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
Like I make changes in my fork in the vignette folder. I make changes there to the documentation, and then he had me do a pull request, so it sent it to his repository. It looks like, and so he could see all of the commits I made, and it seems like the pull request like automatically updates with all of the commits I made, so he can still see them if I made it like 4 days ago when I did the pull
Okay.
request a week ago. It seems like, but I think I'm supposed to make a new pull request, which I apparently apparently I uploaded a huge file to
Yeah,
GitHub, which I wasn't supposed to
you
do,
did.
which I deleted, but I only deleted on GitHub and not like in my terminal using something else. But I think like
You should delete it on your terminal.
yeah, I have to figure that out. But I think I need to make a new pull request. Well, I guess I think I'm okay. Never mind.
Okay. Any other questions? John, Akil?
No, I've just been listening. And before anything gets fully published, Wanding would have to approve it, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. He gets the
Okay,
final
okay.
say.
Okay, yeah, okay.
He can review your commits line by line. I didn't show that actually. So let's say I do the file format. No, it's not. I do a bunch of stuff, right? And then I would do git add, stage them, git commits. Just make it very undescriptive commits, git push, right? And we're still in that branch. We haven't gone out from the branch. It still says we're on dev branch, this dev branch. And then we switch this branch. We create a pull request for the changes we recently made. We want to basically take from our dev to main. And this is the changes that we've made. Create pull request, create pull request. No, okay, that's like you making a change, okay?
Okay.
And now if we go to Wanding's side, Wanding will say, okay, this is the commit. We can go to the commits here. Okay, there's one commit. And he can look at all of the changes you made.
Oh, so it would highlight in a different color any changes we made.
Yeah. So any
Okay.
lines you add is green, and any lines you delete is red.
Okay.
And then we can say, you can close pull request. You can actually write a comment. Yeah, you can say, please review. And they'll get an email that you commented on this because you don't like it. Yeah. So
Okay.
even if you create a pull request, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the changes you made will have to be published to the actual repo. It just means that you're giving your changes to the owner so that they can review it and then bring it in.
Okay.
Cool. So yeah, that's it for me on my side. That basically tells you all you need to do. But one thing I want to do is just go to Sesame, and I actually want to fork it to look. So it has a lot of forks. I'll fork it to Ethan, and it basically copies everything. And now I could clone this repo in my directory. This is probably what Elaine did in my computer. And then I can edit it, and I can git, commit, push on my main branch, which is on the copy of Sesame that I made. And then if I make changes here, so let's say that I want to add a space right there. Okay. I commit the changes, and I could go back to this pull request tab. I could say make pull request. I could say, okay, basically what I want to do is I want to make a pull request from my Sesame to the base Sesame, and it notices that there's the space edition right here. I create pull request. This is a test for the Linux workshop. And then I hit create pull request. And now Wanding will see that I made that change, and he'll get a notification that I did this change. And then I'll get a notification if he comments, rejects, accepts. That's the idea. I made the change on the remote GitHub, but if you were to clone this and make changes just as we did on the main branch, so without branching and doing the whole git checkout thing, just by by staging, committing, and pushing on the main branch of your forked version, then you could create a pull request on GitHub. That's the idea. That's how you contribute. And good thing about me doing all of this is that I understand it really well now. So if you have any questions, please, by all means, it would help me out. Yes, Lane? You good?
Yeah, if you do the git clone for cloning a repository, should that be like the original repository or the one that you forked? And if you've done it already, can you like not do it again?
So it depends. So if you want to be creating branches, then you do the original one. But if you don't want to be creating branches, like if you're doing like incremental, I don't know how to explain it. They're kind of the same thing when you think about it, because you're either creating a fork, which you can do a bunch of changes to on that one fork, or you're creating branches, which are like small changes. Actually, I don't know if they'd be small changes. Basically, the only difference, I don't know. I don't actually know. I think you're fine. You're fine. You forked it, right? Yeah, you're fine with forking it because I guess Sesame isn't changing a lot. So you wouldn't necessarily need to git pull any of the changes that are there aren't any changes being made to Sesame too often. So you wouldn't need to pull any of them. So you'd clone the original repo if someone else was actively working on it and you wanted to get those changes from the remote to your local. But since Sesame isn't changing, you're okay with forking it because all you need to worry about is a copy of that repository in that point in time. That was a good question. You're fine.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Okay,
if you clone the original one, you'd have to create branches and then push to those branches. And then I show this on here. You git status to see where you are. You could always do git checkout main. Yeah, now we're back at main. So now I could git commit add, and I wouldn't need to create a pull request because I'm on the main branch right now, and I'm the owner of the repository. And I can do git checkout and create another branch. I can create a bunch of branches. It could be a tree. Cool. So if there are any other questions, we could turn to some GitHub example. We could turn to some Linux examples. I know that I was trying to communicate a bit with John and Akil on their database curation. I know I gave John some direction, right? I told you what to use. Bed tools closest, was it?
Coverage. You
Coverage,
showed me the
okay.
coverage, yeah.
Yeah, so it is coverage. I just forgot what I said. And Akil, you're working on the GC content. Do you know how you're doing that yet? Have you decided, like, in your head?
I'm still trying. Me and John just got access to all the filing literally a few days ago, so we're trying to just get access to everything, figure everything out right now.
Okay.
We talked with Mike earlier today. We're just trying to maneuver around both HPC storages to figure out what we're doing.
Okay. I want to show you something. So, right, you should have followed. You just got access with it for HPC, so you should follow this documentation. Have you seen this?
Yeah, we were going through that today. Yeah, we were going
Okay.
through that today. We just added all the sign links and everything.
The sim links? Good.
Yeah, we just added those today.
Okay. Okay, cool. For some reason. Okay. So I want to show you one thing, Akil. For the GC content, you'll notice that in the references file here for Affinium Array and Epic, in the Epic HD38 manifest, you'll notice that each probe has a bunch of columns. It also has this right here, which is the design of the probe. I don't know how many base pairs there are. There might be 50. I can check real quick. There are 50. Don't save. And for that, all you want to do is you want to calculate the GC content of the probe, I think. I think that's the idea. So what you could do is just grab this column using awk and then do a count in awk of the number of C's and the number of G's, and that would be your GC content. So for instance, if you wanted to, if you want to figure out, okay, so how do we count in awk, you could just Google awk count number of characters in string. I don't know how to do it. This is how I usually do this. Number of specified characters in a string, each line, each character in a line. You said print length. Go to this Stack Overflow post. That's a good idea. Count character counts of fields. So it might take a little bit of Googling, and I don't know. Okay, here it is. This would be code you'd use. There's 0. Output. Test, test, test. 8, 9, 10. What is he trying to do? So in awk, the split function takes a variable. The first parameter is the variable. The second parameter is what you're storing the split in. And then the third, so it's kind of backwards. This is the number of things it kind of creates, okay? This is like the length of the split. Kind of think if you're splitting something up, you're creating an array. So if you're splitting up a string, you would split it up into kind of like string. The return of split in awk is the length of this array. And then A is the array. And string would be your $9. And then this right here is a regular expression which corresponds to, I don't know, this is a good question. We're actually going to try this out. We can actually test this out pretty easily. We do echo string.
Spelled echo wrong.
Thanks. Let's do this. Echo string awk. Why did I not copy it? $1. Do I have awk installed? I do. It's there. And then I can do print a. Can't read value of a. Oh, A1. I always did that wrong. For some reason, that's splitting each character. Okay, let's try this instead. Awk split string into array. Split string into array. Huh. Splitting a string with awk.
So what's the question? Do you have to use awk to solve it?
I'd like to,
Okay.
because then you don't need to worry about loading it into R. Whenever I can solve something in awk, oh, there it is. I figured it out. Whenever you don't, okay, so empty character, when you do empty, that just means every character. You see that? So I know Yang, I know you like to bring everything into R, but I try to stay away from that as much as possible. I know there's tons of functions in R, tons of functions in every language, but whenever we're dealing with parsing files, it's very easy to just bring it in. So if I were in here, do less this, and then you're gonna bring it in. I'm sorry. Bring it into this command here. Change the column you're doing, and then do a count for the number of strings that are either G or C, and then divide that by the length of the probe. And it's safe to assume that all the probes are the same length, 50. And that's how you would find the GC content for each probe in that file.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do. You're more than welcome to bring it into R. You're more than welcome to use another language, actually. You're more than welcome to use Python. It might be faster. It probably is. But for parsing files, because the I/O in Python isn't so straightforward as it is in input-output I/O, isn't so straightforward in Python and R as it is for awk. Because awk, it's based off of input and output. Python, you have to bring it in using some library whose names I just can't remember, and I spend time Googling. And you can see with awk, I spent time Googling, but now I learned something and I'll be able to use it for the next one. Yeah, but more than welcome. And then I gave John BedTools coverage. That counts the number of overlap between the amount of overlap within a range, and you can set that range. And a lot of time with BedTools, what you can do, BedTools is beautiful documentation. I think we're done with all this stuff. So if you do BedTools and you search intersect, coverage, it'll give you often graphics, but this one just doesn't have it. But it'll have an explanation. It computes the breadth and the depth and breadth. So depth is the difference between depth and breadth. You can kind of think of depth of when you talk about sequencing, short read sequencing. You want to know the depth of each. The depth of each. You want to know the depth at each nucleotide. which is just how many short reads are overlapping at that point. So you know how confident you are with that nucleotide call, which is just whether it's an A, T, C, or G. Same thing can be said about bisulfite sequencing when you're trying to determine the methylation of a sequence. And then breadth is kind of laterally, so going left to right along a sequence. And so I was Googling around, I was thinking of different ways that John could implement bed tools. I know that John started off with what you were thinking of, just doing a count, but that has a very, it would take a lot to code when you just have tools that are readily available.
Yeah,
Yang,
that's what I was thinking. It would have been like an easy way if I just did like a for loop and just had
Yeah.
a count, but I would have ended up having like so many different counts. It would have just been ridiculous instead of just using bed tools, which offers a lot, it seems, after reading some of this.
Yeah. So if you it's good to learn bed tools, because I know Wanning's going to want you to learn these tools. I know how to use coverage. Oh, I know how to use coverage now. Closest, intersect, group by, make windows, maybe some others. Overlap. Still more to learn. Yang, what are you currently working on?
Still the geomining
which part?
merge different columns into the same to reduce the size.
Okay, which column are you working on? Because I know Michael came to me with a question, and I sent him some awk that would kind of help him out.
Okay.
So the idea, sure.
I'm currently trying to reduce how the disease state is. Some are repeated because, for example, some people has cancer, but they just they type cancer in different category. So I need to switch them between category and category.
Okay.
The problem is how to find them and how to switch.
So you're saying that, sorry, 1 second. Are you saying they put the fact that the sample is diseased in different parts in the geo entry?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I need to find where and switch back and put the right one in.
Have you tried creating? See, what I would do, and this is kind of what I did for this right here, for annotating branches. I used awk to grep each line, and if there was any kind of indication that it was diseased, then I would basically print that it was diseased or normal. So what you could do is you could do something like, for awk, you'd say, you do an if statement, if one, this, a tilde means regular expression. Well, it means match. It basically means match, so it's tied with regular expressions. You can put the regular expression between two forward slashes, and then you could do cancer, double pipe for or if one, which is, sorry, we'd want to do 0 for whether it's the entire line, because you're saying that the fact that it's cancer is being put randomly across different fields. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, and you can do unhealthy, and then if that's the case, you're going to print bad or whatever, and then you can do else print good. And now for each entry in that file, you have bad, healthy, that might just be better, unhealthy, or healthy, right? And then what you could do is you could do this, you could pipe it to paste, and then have your file here, and then dash, and the dash indicates that it's the output of awk that you want to put to the right of your file. Some other things, I'm assuming that you have a header in the first row, so you only want this to apply for the NR, which are greater than 1. And then to account for that header that is in, to account for the header that's in the file, when you paste them together, you do, when the first row, when NR is equal to 1, you want to print the header, so it'd be disease state. And then from this, you have all of the disease states, or you'd have disease states. So what I could do is I could even take this. I wonder if this still exists. It does. I doubt that I'd have any healthy. I doubt that, because you didn't include all of the only information I get would be from the names. But if you applied this to the sample sheet that you have, then I'm sure you'd get a lot of hits. And then doing this, what you could do is you could look at regions. Well, at least what I did is I made it so that it could either have a branch ID, I could either assign it a branch ID, or I could not assign it a branch ID. So then what I did is I filtered by the rows that don't have branch IDs, and I was able to find out what words I was missing, because I assume that you'll need many more words than cancer and unhealthy to categorize them into 2 groups.
Yeah, that's about like 300, maybe more. So
yeah. So this process is tedious, and that's what I did for the branch IDs. But from this, we were able to label 170,000 branches. We were able to label 170,000 samples with this. So Yang, if you want to, this would be my kick at it. So I'll send it in the chat if you'd like to explore that option. But if you're doing something in R, then that's fine as well.
Okay.
A lot of different tools and a lot of different ways you can go about solving a problem. But that's what's fascinating, isn't it? Cool. All right. Do we have any other questions? We're almost at the top of the hour. If not, you're all free to go. I won't hold you here any longer. Enjoy your Thursday.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you usually post this video right after?
I'll download it and post it, yes.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Oh, it finished? I went to the bathroom.
They all left.
Okay, sorry.
All right, I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.